Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissistic relationships and healing from these relationships. Well, just like there's different ways of sort of having to stay in a narcissistic relationship, there's also different ways of leaving the narcissistic relationship. Let's take that on. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the video you saw, just saw the other day. We just did a video about the different ways staying looks in a narcissistic relationship. Well, obviously, there's the other side of this, when you go, and sort of these different ways of being when you leave a narcissistic relationship. And when I say going, I mean either ending a narcissistic relationship, going no contact, doing something like quitting a job. It means really, ostensibly, it's ended and everyone knows it's ended. So let's talk about these again, because it's not as simple as, I don't want to talk to this narcissistic person anymore. So the first sort of way of going is sort of the big one, the no contact, the you can't find me, I'm not going to respond approach. It's big. Don't get me wrong. No contact can work if you have the capacity to do it. But still, despite that, many people feel guilty when they go no contact, like they're doing a bad thing. Or you may get shamed by other people who may know both you and the person you're going no contact with. Some people may tell you you're being too extreme. It can also carry some collateral damage with it. It may mean that you're not just going no contact with the primary narcissistic person, but also with lots of people that the two of you were connected with. And especially as people might even feel compelled to start choosing sides. They may resent you that they have to choose sides, and they may view you as the problem because you're the one who ended contact. Now, every so often, a narcissistic person will go no contact with you. Ultimately, I'm telling you, it is a huge win for you, but initially, it may not feel good and it may feel like abandonment. Now, this idea of no contact, though, let's face it, it's out of reach for many people. It can be difficult in family systems, but it is possible. And I have seen it happen all the time. It is somewhat impossible if you're co-parenting, for example, minor children. It gets challenging even when your shared children are adults because of stuff like graduations, weddings, life. And in some cases, again, the narcissistic parent may cut and run once their children aren't interesting to them anymore. So the no contact may happen like that. You no longer have contact with your own parent because they decided to leave. Or certainly if the narcissistic co-parent cut and run a long time ago from your own life, your marriage or relationship with them. But the fewer ties you have with a narcissistic person, the easier this decision to go no contact becomes. And yes, it works because the less you see them, it does fade over time. But again, it's not available to most people, and it's not always easy. Then there is the going that looks like just ending the relationship, but you have far, far less contact, perhaps even very low contact, where you see them very occasionally. You might do a little gray rocking, yellow rocking, firewalling, not going deep when you see them. Now, this kind of breaking up, but occasionally having contact, most often applies to romantic relationships. It may be ending a relationship, and maybe you have some friends in common, so there's still some contact. The other way to think about this is that this relationship is sort of done in your head, like no more, I am not really in this anymore. But when you think about what I talked about in the other video, that there's times when you have to stay for almost mandated reasons, right? Like you have to stay because of things like a family court or a job, that kind of thing. And ongoing encounters with the person may feel uncomfortable, awkward. Again, if you tell someone a relationship is done, that's what we're talking about now. But it still can feel like a slow fade if they still keep staying in touch with you. And then next we have the version of going that entails you no longer being physically around, but you never really formally ended the relationship. For example, you may move far away from your family. You may move to another division of a company or even another office in another geographical location. You and a friend may no longer be living near each other. Now, this version of going that I'm talking about, the physical separation, doesn't tend to apply to romantic relationships as much. But this whole physical moving thing can be tricky. You may feel like you're out of the relationship, but even 10,000 miles doesn't make a difference if you haven't done things like radically accepted the narcissism. It can create an illusion that you are out of it, But if you're still surprised at their invalidating text messages or manipulative voicemails or gaslighting video calls or weird stuff on a group text, if you're surprised, that means you haven't radically accepted and this relationship may still be getting in your head. I have known many people who have moved halfway across the world and they think that, well, now I don't need to deal with my family anymore or this person anymore. But trauma bonds can stretch a very long way. So it can be easy to fall into the illusion that, oh, I'm out of the relationship. But actually, you just aren't physically near it. And it still affects you. If you radically accept, if you see it, grieve it, and disengage from these patterns, you may be more gone if you live next door and do all that than if you live 12 time zones away. Keep in mind that ending a narcissistic relationship can carry some risks. And by risks, I mean things like post-separation abuse, smear campaigns, flying monkeys, shaming enablers, and your own process of self-doubt, self-blame, pity, guilt, fear, duty, obligation. Healing happens whether you stay or go, and these decisions evolve over time. You may figure out that someone is narcissistic, see it as a pattern, radically accept, manage the grief, disengage, and then slowly transition away. And that happens on your schedule. For some of you, you may wait to hit absolute rock bottom in this relationship. You may endure the daily indignities of the narcissistic relationship, but one day they go a bridge too far. Maybe they put someone you care about at risk. Maybe they put you at risk or physically harm you. Maybe they say something unforgivable or betray your trust in a way that you can't unsee it. That rock bottom looks different for everyone. The key to healing is that the decisions you make once you recognize and see these patterns is that you make these decisions at your pace in a way that feels safe and comfortable to you. You may make some changes immediately. You may take years to make the changes. In some cases, you may never fully step away, but instead go more low contact. But in this video, we're really talking about when you've really ended the relationship. Healing means autonomy. It means trusting yourself and honoring your choices and taking responsibility for them, even when they're uncomfortable. And that can be very difficult in the early phase after you end a narcissistic relationship. But when people ask you, so are you staying in or are you ending it? I hope you now can see between these two videos the reason all of this feels so confusing is that this question simply isn't that straightforward. It's not as simple as I'm going to end the relationship or I'm going to stay in it. Whether you stay in it or leave, there's many different ways this looks. There's ways that it's cleaner. There's ways that are more honest to yourself. And so, like I said, just moving halfway across the globe isn't that simple. And while it often also doesn't track as like, can you really end a relationship with a family? The ending piece is very much that the other person knows you're out. They don't have the same access to you. They may act like they do, but it's that very deliberate, like, I'm not doing this anymore. And that's a very big moment. If you haven't gotten there yet, don't shame yourself. It can take a very long time, if ever. The key isn't about the leaving or the going. It's about doing any of this in a fully narcissism-informed way, understanding what these relationships are about and what they've done to you. So at a minimum, you can catch yourself and stop yourself in the self-blaming language. Thanks again.